everybody.
Welcome to the first, maybe of many, episodes of Just Hang Up.
Yes, the inaugural episode that you definitely
Wow.
should not hang up on despite the moniker.
Yes, that is for other things, which we will discuss in length.
In great detail.
Probably more so than you want to hear about.
It's going to be great. Who hasn't made a podcast during COVID? We're all going to have a great
Oh, and like now is the time, right? We have so much to talk about.
goodness. We have so much to talk about and so much time. That's really like something that's been interesting to me with COVID. And it's something that you and I, Sarah, have talked about a lot before, but
Yeah.
like the
Should we
concept.
tell people who we are?
Yeah, I guess we should do that, huh? I just realized I like
We're
dropped
ready
your
to
name and into the void.
I was like, they don't
Anybody
know
out there?
Sarah. Who is she?
Who is Sarah? Tell us who she is.
Okay, let's start with you, Sheila. Tell us a bit about who Sheila Houlahan really is.
Oh, wow. God. Okay. No pressure. Introduce your entire person in a nanosecond. Hi, I'm Sheila Houlahan. Nice to meet you. I technically live in Los Angeles, though I'm currently sheltering in place in Seattle, Washington, where I'm from. I am an actor. I am a singer, producer, a wearer of many hats, and a teacher as well. So it's been
a general badass.
Oh, thank you. You can read more about my career on my Instagram or on IMDb. And I'm going to let Sarah take it away now.
Let's take it away. My headphones are wild, you guys. I'm not used to wearing them. I've recently had an experience writing a bio, which maybe we'll talk about today. But I'm Sarah Parsons. I am the Chief Operating Officer of Pink Shark PR, which is a PR agency and influencer marketing. And we help leverage PR for tech companies, thought leaders, and brands. And I'm also an actor, a producer, and an amateur watercolorist.
Oh my God, not amateur. What? Everyone, just so you know, she's starting to share more of her works on her personal Instagram page, and I invite you to check it out. She's doing so many different gorgeous series. And also, let's not forget the fact that you're about to take pilot lessons that you do. You see the Indiana Jones poster behind her, like she's a regular Indiana Jane and is fully embracing the Harrison Ford aesthetique that we all strive to have.
That is Sheila and I's that is the thing we bonded over. I think the first time we went to Disneyland, you're like, so what do you want to do? And I told her and you were like, tell me more.
Same thing. Yeah, we made up a hashtag Harris Summer. Now, we haven't actually had a chance to use it, so I think we're going to have to change it to Harrison Fall. But the nice thing about his name is that really it's a seasonal name. It's something that you can choose with any one of the 4 seasons. What that could be like Harrison Summer, Harris Spring, Harrison Fall, Winter.
Harris Solstice?
Harris Solstice! Harris Solstice. That sounds like some weird, like, quasi-pagan ritual, blood sacrifice to the gods.
Honestly, you and me will be celebrating that holiday,
just in the moonlight, in the coldest wintry time. I love it. Harris Solstice is probably my favorite hashtag now. So yeah, you're all invited to use that hashtag. Please spread the Harris Solstice movement. It's critical.
It is critical to our well-being as well as our thriving art society to appreciate Harrison Ford for all he has contributed, honestly.
He really has. What a gem of a human.
What a gem. But I hate to interrupt people, but I wanted the folks, the friends, the people to know who we are before we dive in. And really, those are just our job titles. I feel like what we'll talk about on the show here is really going to be interesting because the whole idea of the show came about because we sit and talk on the phone as friends do. And I feel like so many of our conversations were universal.
Yeah, I would have to say so. It was something that, I guess that's why I forgot about even just doing an intro of like, hi, here I am on paper. Nice to meet you from paper to paper is like so much of why I consider you, Sarah, to be one of my closest friends and why I really enjoy our conversations is that they touch on, I think, the lived experience that's universal to all of us, especially now with COVID, with other disasters going on and the interesting inner turmoil and subsequent growth and opportunity that it brings up. I think to me, that's always been more a definition of who a person is, right? Like, I
Absolutely.
think we talked about this last week, but it's so funny when people talk to you about like, what are your hobbies? And you're like, I mean, here are things that I do, but here's something I've been obsessively thinking about for a week. Would you like to hear
Yeah.
about that?
I'd like to
You know,
know
that's
about
more
it.
human.
Yeah. And I feel like that changes, especially, when you have suddenly, I think everybody was thrust into a time where they realize how much time they have and how irrelevant time is, that it really is a construct, and that it can either go by really quickly or really fast, depending on not just how much you're enjoying it, but also how present you are. And I think hobbies are one of the things that either, for me, my hobbies, right? Um, they make me more present, I would say, because they help me tune in rather than numb out, which is something I actively seek to avoid.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I think hobbies, when coming at them from a holistic place, are all about connecting with yourself and tuning in at the present moment. And that's why I think when we reduce them to things like, I like to kayak, you're like, I guess this is me. And it kind of feels
Yeah.
bad. I don't know. I always feel weird when it's like, what are your hobbies? Because it's so reductive. I think it erases the biggest part of any sort of hobby or activity that we like, which is, as you're saying, Sarah, the experience of it. It's like, I went on a kayak trip recently, and it wasn't being like, well, I'm sitting in a kayak, that was so terribly exciting. It was like, I'm
Yeah.
getting to see so much, I'm getting like a different vantage point of the world. There was like new, for me, touch is like a really big way that I ground myself, especially different sensations than I'm used to feeling every day. And certainly, like, being adjacent to a lake rather than looking at it from a distance is
Yeah.
a huge
Or
scene
on the
change.
lake, of course.
Totally. And I think that experience, describing what that does to your psyche, is so much harder to say than kayaking. I think
Hey,
maybe
it's not
that's what I want to ask people from now on. What's been your favorite experience lately?
that's really what things are about. I mean, I think, gosh, that's what my mind keeps going off on recently is I've told you this a million times, Sheila, so I probably sound like a broken record, but the people don't know. The
The
people
people need to know.
they need to know. So I'm going to tell them and they're going to be annoyed and they're going to hear it again. But I have been really obsessed with the work of Michael Singer recently. He's written so many beautiful books and does this beautiful talks and audiobooks. In short, his whole work is about the idea of surrender, and that your life, you should be living your life in surrender. And his whole premise is that your life is a spiritual experience to experience life, right? To feel all of the emotions, to do all of the things. So I think it's also reductive to say these are my hobbies, because we get attached to things as if this is what I will always enjoy doing. This is
Mm,
who I am, not something I do.
that's so true. The difference between identity and saying this is a facet of who I am. Like, this is a thing that I enjoy experiencing, rather than like, I identify as a lover of books.
Oh,
Like, yeah,
that's Sheila's
pet peeve.
doing
Sorry to any of
Walrus
you who
pet
really
peeve.
I love reading book memes. They're like kind of a pet peeve, because I'm like, of course we all do, but like, you're so much bigger than that. Why would you reduce yourself to that? Unless you like it, and then like, more power to you. That's totally your thing. I'm just,
I am. I get it though. I'm not. My pet peeve isn't that specific. I'm a little bit more of a general hater of all of that stuff. So I'm a little more generalistic and more equal opportunity. Um, but I really bristle at not identifying. That's not the right word. Oh gosh, equating who we are, or being like, this is who I am based off of a sports team we like,
mhm.
um, a hobby we do, a job we do. That's not who you are. These are things you enjoy right now. And I think it's really important for me to emphasize the right now, because I don't know about you, Sheila, but I go through stages with things I'm obsessed with or fall in love with. And it's not that I fall in and out of love with them. It's just new things come into who I am. So it's like, yes, I loved this a lot at this moment, whether it was, you know, when I was young, I was obsessed with all of the movies of Audrey Hepburn, or when I was 15, I was obsessed with Phantom of the Opera. Let's not go there.
No,
Embarrassing.
let's go there, but another day.
Another day, another time, another discussion. Listen, I know the whole soundtrack. It's great. I wanted to be Christine so bad. Not now. My God, what a terrible thing to be. She was hunted. Anyway, the thing is, it becomes part of who you are. And there's part of us that's really, I think, terrified to let that go, because when we identify that as our identity or who we are, it's not natural, because our natural state is change.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Our natural state is in constant fluctuation. Yeah, it seems to me like when I see that behavior, it seems like it's like a placeholder or a filler, which I understand. Like sometimes you're in flux, right? Like you're trying to figure that out, and there's definitely no right or wrong timeline for figuring anything out. I think we have to burn the concept of a timeline at all. But I think it just you have to remember that those kinds of temporary identities are placeholders.
Absolutely.
And the work is still there. And my thought is, yes, of course, the work of self-actualization is hard, but hopefully that's something that you'd want to do before you die.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what everybody's beliefs are, but it's like, who knows how many times you get to go around, and what it means if you do go around again, or what it means after you finish this level. I don't know. Are we in a video game? I don't know. But
are we in one? Where's it?
The next level, I'm gonna appear in a different outfit.
How do I cheat?
Somewhere, right? But the thing is, I think we kind of think of life as a game.
Yeah.
And you're like, hate to tell you, but when you hack things, the only person getting cheated is yourself.
Yeah, you're not. It's like, yeah. You know what? This is actually reminding me of something. Like growing up, all of us were so obsessed with The Sims. Not sure if that was your obsession too.
Everybody.
Oh, right. Everybody loved The Sims. Like, come
Listen,
on,
guys, if you're listening, tell us which
cheat codes you loved. I mean, really, like, I look at my way of experiencing The Sims as a 10-year-old, and I'm like, God, if my parents had swung by, they would have been like, oh, child's a little sociopath. Because
right?
you just cheat, you get all this expensive stuff, and then you lock them in and burn them or put them in the pool. Like, my goodness, The Sims was violent. But anyways, before we explore the disturbing psyche addressed in The Sims and Sims 2, it's something where, I think because everybody in middle school was just like, I don't want to freaking play this properly. I don't want the experience. I just want to enter the cheats so I can have all the nice things now. Everybody got so violently bored, because I don't think that's how we're meant to exist. Like I like to think that anything that you want in your life, if you I don't want to negate privilege, and I don't want to negate access, but I think that with the right combination of environmental and internal factors, things can come for you easily. There is the possibility of it being easy, but sometimes I think when it's too easy, we become divorced from process. I think there's a difference between things being easy and things being instant.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that we bristle sometimes so much with ease, because we think there is, and again, not to negate privilege or access, that is highly important and something that needs to be reiterated often. But I think there is something when you are lucky enough to realize that things can come easy, and you've learned that. You see the difference between allowing things to come easily to you because it's the natural flow and flux and state of things, as opposed to, I guess there's a difference between, to me, ease and disregard of appreciation of things that appear to you, because you can't even, I feel like, recognize what's in front of you if you haven't done that work, that self-actualization work.
That's a really good way of putting it, the disregard versus ease, because I think so much of what makes any experience enjoyable for me is the going through the journey of it. like I think back to kayaking, and like there were times where it was like, whoo, rough, choppy waters because of all these party boats going by. And I was like, I don't use my arms. It's been the pandemic. Like, who does this? And that was hard, but it was fun because I signed up for it and I knew that I could turn back at any point in time. Like, if it had just been like, I don't know, I think that that's part of the experience. We're meant to live in every color. Not
Mm.
meant to
You
need.
know my favorite. You know my favorite
Oh,
quote. We're bringing her up.
gotta
We're
drop
bringing
that
her
quote.
up. I'm gonna
Gotta
drop
drop it.
this quote. I'm gonna paraphrase it because I can never say it as eloquently as Michael Singer had said it. Again, we're bringing him up. But essentially, what he said that I really has resonated with me, especially in the last month and through quarantine, is that your heart is meant to play a symphony, and every experience is a different note, and it was equipped to play every single one of them.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're robbing yourself of a lot of. I remember this. I remember somebody saying this 2 years ago to me in LA. They were like, "Joy is not defined by happiness." And there's a
Mm.
misconception there that if we're experiencing joy, it means we must be happy. And I can think of times where I felt joy, but I was like feeling a lot. But I
Yeah.
was at the heart of it was joy because I was alive and I was feeling.
Yeah, I think joy to me is a deeper, more resonant experience of life where it is inclusive of all kinds of feelings, right? Like you
Mhm.
said, you could feel lots of things, whereas happiness feels like a happy meal. Like it's shallow, it doesn't have any nutrition. I mean, it seems
Jack,
like it will be tasty and we
Jack
really think we want it. But we know those chicken nuggets are made out of like puree. Who knows?
knows?
But
What a
we still
mystery.
want it.
Mystery meat.
It's not even meat, you guys.
That's so wild. I'm a lifetime vegetarian, so I just like don't. Meat is already a mystery, but
God
that has
bless. You
been
never had to experience that.
no, no. Well, apparently I ate when I was like a toddler, but you're a baby at that point. You don't
You didn't.
like, you don't know what you're doing. You're just waddling around.
You know what's annoying to me? This is a
Mhm.
tangent. When people say that their first memory, like when people tell me that they remember being born.
Dead. I do know some people who say that, and I do believe them. But tell me more about why this irks you. I'm curious.
Because what do you mean you remember being born? That's, I don't know how
No,
to
you
describe.
don't.
No, you don't. That's my.
Oh my god, that's so funny.
And I get it. Everybody has their own experience, but it's a pet peeve and it's irrational,
I
as
love
pet peeves
it.
are by their nature. I'm like, no, you didn't.
No, you didn't. That's so funny. I don't know that
Yeah.
I would want to remember. I was a C-section
No.
baby and I was upside down.
Oh my gosh.
I know, wild. And so they had to cut my mom open and then
Oh
just
yeah.
weave through her to get out the baby. That's not like a thing I want in my brain. I'm really grateful that my brain just blocks out experiences like birth.
Maybe we're lucky. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, maybe we're just the lucky ones who don't remember.
But they say it in a way where they feel like, I remember being born. Good for you,
Yeah, well, I mean, there
Janet.
it is, right? If there's like a flex, then it's like, okay, well,
It's
there
the
you are
flex.
flexing. Like, what do you,
It's the
it's
flex.
so uncomfortable for me when people just start flexing. It doesn't even matter what it is about because I'm always like, how do I respond? That's really what my discomfort is in that moment. Is I'm like,
Yeah.
you're being your own cheerleader. I
But
don't know
it's
what to
not your
do.
own cheerleader. Because here's the thing, the difference for me is if you're your own cheerleader, you're like able to celebrate yourself in a way that's comfortable and you don't
Sure,
need the approval of other people. A flex is
sure.
like you desperately, desperately need them to approve
I
your or
guess that's
validate
why
your
it's
existence.
it's so uncomfortable.
It's horrible. You're like, do I tell them the truth or I don't know, is the truth what they want to hear? Because most of the time it's like, I don't agree with your flex. Um,
How do you respond in that moment? What do you do?
oh, I don't know.
It's a
I don't
nightmare.
know. It is a truly hideous nightmare. And as both of us being actors, we have experienced that quite a bit.
Yeah. We have, and it's always a lot. I just
A
like,
lot.
I get in trouble sometimes because I like to be honest with people.
Same.
When
I
that's,
cannot lie. I start laughing. I'm like
I love that. I didn't
smiling.
know that you did that. I've never seen that. That's
Because I
funny.
can't. Because I don't lie. Because if I do, I'm like.
Just start. Yeah. It's so funny. A friend of mine, without naming specifics, went to a modern dance show, and she's just not a fan of modern dance. That's all it is. And after the show, she was like, "How do I talk to the person in the dance company who invited us? Because it's just not my cup of tea. But like, clearly, this is very important to them, and I want to support." And then she was like, is this why I don't believe compliments? Like, is this why I think everyone's lying?
That's so
Because I was like,
interesting.
great job. You
I see you.
love it. The heart of
That's
imposter
so
syndrome.
interesting. Oh my gosh. Okay, so that's so interesting because I think it's a universal thing, that nobody believes compliments. I was raised like you like fight off compliments. Like if somebody compliments you, definitely you cannot accept it
Yeah, I
at
don't
all
know why.
costs.
There's something about like, I remember the first girl that I met in college who took compliments, and I was so shook. Um,
What was that
she just
experience like? That's so different.
It was super, I mean, she was younger than me by a year. And it just taught me a lot. Like it was very interesting to behold because she just was able to be like, thank you, and really mean it. Like she heard the compliment, she let it touch her and affect her, and then she said thank you from a sincere place. And it's not like I thought of any less of her. I wasn't like, oh, you took that compliment, you
Like,
swine. I was
oh,
like,
okay.
wow, this is so different. Like just being around that energy taught me a lot, and it made me realize how uncomfortable it is to actually sit there and accept love.
Yeah, whoa. We're
Oof.
getting into it. We're getting
Oof.
into it. Welcome to
Get
episode
in.
1.
Welcome.
Should we explain why this podcast is called Just Hang Up?
Yeah, we should. We should do it. Okay,
I'm
so
gonna let Sheila explain this because
I'm
this
so
is
excited.
truly
I'm
her
really excited to
baby
tell this
name.
story. So I was on a call with a publicist who will not be named. And it was just like a consultation call of like, okay, what is it like to work with you? I have a big film that I shot with Warner Brothers that's coming out next year. And so I've been eager to be like, okay, like what are things that I can do to get the word out now? So I was talking to this person, and their strategies were bananas. Like, I am a woman of color, and the film details people of color in the police force. And so
Wild.
I'm like pitching this film to this person, and they're like, have no idea what I'd do with that. And I'm like, really? Have you not? So you haven't like watched?
Are you in the world?
So you do? So how do you like? How are we missing this? And the call was super weird. It was supposed to be like an hour free consultation, but I just hung up on him after 15 minutes because I was like, there's nothing left for me to say. Like, this clearly isn't working out, and I'm not going to sit here in a space that's like not going anywhere that makes me feel deeply uncomfortable.
Yeah, and that resonated because it felt so powerful that there are so many things that we can just hang up on in our
Yeah,
lives.
you don't have to always participate in the weird. Like, sometimes the weird is magical and wonderful. I love weird, but sometimes it's like, where are we? I think there's a confusion that comes up in the space of boundaries and politeness. Like, I think that by giving you 15 minutes to like really see, are we going to gel? That's me being polite.
That's a
And at
lot
that
of
point,
time.
it's a lot of time. 15
As
minutes is
someone in the
still,
PR industry, that's a lot of time. Like our sales calls are 15 to 20 minutes. You know what I
yes, it's so
mean?
much time.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to give everybody like the space to
Yeah.
explain themselves. But if it's just not, I mean, goodness, if you can't think of anything worth talking about in regards to people of color and the police in 2020, I'm like, bye. Like, I wish you all the best. This hang up isn't me being like, well, screw you. Like, there wasn't any like
Right.
rudeness. I literally just pressed the hang up button.
Yeah.
They texted me a couple times. They were like, oh, I think we got disconnected, and I didn't respond because I'm like, it doesn't matter.
Right. That's it. You hung
It's
up.
fine.
And
It's
it's
gonna
like,
be
I think
okay.
there's also the misconception. I think it's really great that you touched on this, that people think by setting boundaries with your time and your energy and your politeness, that if you set those boundaries and uphold them, that you are being rude,
Mm,
or that you have to be rude to uphold the boundaries.
yes, God, I think that's why so many of us, especially women and femmes, have a problem with setting boundaries. Is that we were taught that it's not okay.
Yeah. And that if we aren't being, this is something I touched on in a piece that I wrote recently that's coming out soon. Um, yeah, but essentially, we are taught to be nice. And we're also taught that the opposite of being nice is you are uncaring or cold or calculating.
Mm,
And my argument would be that that is based around the hysterical or difficult woman trope, and that actually the opposite of nice and the true thing that we should do is to be kind. And kindness you have to give to yourself first, and you can only be kind to yourself if you uphold your boundaries.
wow. Okay, that's so I love that. There's so much goodness there. Yeah, I mean, I it's funny you say that. I remember somebody once telling me in college that nice was their least favorite English word. And I remember being
Mm.
like, that's weird. There's so much you can do with nice. And now I'm like, yeah, nice sucks. Like
Yeah,
the
nice is
difference between,
nice.
yeah, nice is like, like the difference between kindness and nice is volumes. It's so much.
Yeah, it's a lot. And you're like, oh,
Kindness. Yeah, kindness comes from an open-hearted place and a desire to have a real authentic connection. Nice is like, hey,
it's putting on a face.
it's putting on a face.
Yeah,
Wow,
not about it.
not about it at all.
Look at this twilight time you're having
Oh my God,
if
it's
you're
so
if you're
dark. I
watching
know.
our
I'm at this
podcast.
point of like, when do I move and call a commercial break because it's getting
We
really
can
dark.
call a commercial break at any time. Do you want to call a commercial break?
No, yeah, I'm really good. Right, I'm
We're
sorry everybody who's
driving.
watching this on YouTube because you're just gonna see my ghostly floating head. But honestly, like the
I think
moon
it's
just came
a
out.
great, oh wow, a spooky
It's
but beautiful
so
time.
right. It's a beautiful time. Who
It's
doesn't
okay.
love
I'm
moon?
that annoying person on Zoom who always has something to drink. Like I don't know if you've seen those memes where they're like the one person who drinks, and it's like that is
That's not
me.
annoying.
Well, I think everybody got annoyed with Zoom in general. So if you did anything on Zoom, people were like, I'm annoyed.
Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, there's so much about Zoom that has like nothing to do with how we talk anyways. We never make
Yeah.
extended eye contact, and so suddenly to be like is so much. Like it's such a zero
Yeah.
to 100.
It is. And I feel like I don't know how you feel about this, but as actors, that's a trap we get caught into a lot anyway. They're like, why are you staring at each other? That's not normal.
You're not listening. You're not like being a person. You're like, hey.
I am
It turns into the like
acting.
weird student mentality of behold, I am performing listening as to like as compared to actually listening to someone, you know?
Oh my God. It's so
Really weird.
true. Performing listening. That's a topic for life. That's something we can hang up on. Like,
Right?
if
Tell me
somebody
about
isn't
it.
really listening to you, that's
Yeah,
something to hang up on.
exactly. If someone is
Uh,
not actually taking in what you're saying, which I think is, I remember in sophomore year of high school, we went on this like retreat, and there was one
oh,
exercise that was like there were so many exercises that we had to do. It was all like self-actualization retreat. And
wow.
in the woods. Ugh, it was supreme.
That is
And
quite a retreat.
I know it was amazing. My English teacher gave us all this like 2-page thing to read, and he was like, "Go walk in the woods and read it."
Wow.
Which when you're 15, you're like, "What?" Like I don't.
What am I supposed to be doing here?
You're like, "What is happening?" And the thing was actually like, it was something titled like, "Can you have a conversation?" And it talked about all the
Hmm.
pitfalls that I wish that I had this thing. It was like such a brilliant piece of writing. And it just talked about all the pitfalls people fall into. Classic pitfalls with having conversations where it's like, are you waiting for your turn to speak? Or are you actually listening? Because listening requires setting yourself aside and being invisible for a few moments, which can be scary to people.
That's insane to me. I wish you had that document. Sorry, I feel like I'm about to sneeze. So excuse me while I like
Let it
make weird
out.
faces. I think I'm just gonna itch my nose. I'll be okay.
That's
We'll
the
know.
worst feeling when it's
It's
stuck
like,
and
is it a sneeze? That is an interesting concept, and I wish people would be taught that because it it is kind of a lost art that I recently spent time with somebody and I noticed I'm the only one who asked questions. They didn't ask questions about me.
Ugh.
I was the only one driving the conversation. There would be these, and I love comfortable silences. Like, I'm not somebody who has to fill the silence. Like, I'm so comfortable with a good silence and sitting in it with another person. But I think there's a difference between a comfortable silence and somebody just not participating equally in a conversation because they don't care.
Mm.
And I don't
Yeah.
know if
It's
it's
like,
because
where
they
are
don't
you?
care. And is it because, that's my question, is it because they don't care, or that's how they communicate with everyone and they just don't know that they're a bad communicator and that they need
And
to
they just don't know that they
listen?
suck at it.
Right. Is that the thing? Is that the thing I need to know? Because I'm going around being like, you didn't ask me any questions.
I've evaluated you and you have a failing grade. Yeah, I think, my thought on that is that I had a great thought. Let's see if it comes back.
She might come
Um,
back.
I think when people, it's interesting to me because I think it comes from a place of feeling discomfort of being authentic. Like, I think there are times we've hung out where one of us has had a migraine or one of us has been like mad depressed. And I think it takes a lot of courage to show up in that moment in that energy and be like, here's me. And if
Oh,
you don't
God.
feel safe with yourself or if you don't feel safe in that moment, like I think a lot of those bigger feelings have a lot of shame around them for no good reason in our society. And so it doesn't feel safe for most people to express that with others, but I think that they rob themselves of the potential for a lot of healing.
A lot
Um,
of healing and a lot of connection.
so much.
And I think there's so many things you said that, I was listening and so many things that you said that I was like, oh my gosh, like my brain just started lighting up, like when that's the cool thing about listening, to take it back to the thing before, is when you actually listen, so many things the conversation is natural because you're listening.
Yeah.
You don't have to think of something to say because
How
you're
exhausting.
listening.
Can
Oh,
you
I couldn't.
imagine?
It's like, if
Oh,
I'm going
talk about rocks. What a prep.
to, but the shame was really interesting. But I think the other facet of it that I find really interesting is that, as the other person, so if you are this other person in the equation and somebody is having these larger feelings that may seem uncomfortable or new to your friendship or your relationship or whatever it is, and you're in that space together and you're holding space for it, you don't have to do anything, and you
Yeah.
don't have to fix it, and you don't have to make it better.
Yeah, you can just sit in it. Like, I don't need I don't need anybody to fix me if I'm in any sort of state. And I don't necessarily feel like it's my place to fix other people either. Like, I think fix in and of itself is such a weird word when
Mm-hmm.
applied to humans or any life form. Like, you can fix a clock, the clock is broken, but a person
Right.
is we have more nuance than that. So it's like I don't think the goal is fixing because that's not the right language for living creatures. I think the goal is just sitting.
It is just sitting. Just sit there. That's the CEO of our company came up with this great thing a couple of years ago called Just Sit There Time. And it was based off of, she's also really obsessed with, self-help, and she's sort of a mindset queen in and of her own. But her concept is like, you just sit there.
Oh, I love me a good sit.
And I think that's to me, to circle back to the beginning of the conversation and where we started in this year and the things we've discovered and gone through in 2020, is we all need to do a lot of sitting.
Goodness knows there's time.
Yeah, finally. There's no
Finally.
excuse. There's always been time. That's the thing.
Yeah, there's always been time. But it's hard, if you're not comfortable with yourself, if you don't like your own company, or if you're afraid of what you're going to find when you're sitting. I can understand why the impulse would be scary, but I think like I've I know so many lovely humans who only define themselves by their worst moments, which I find
Mm.
fascinating. And I know that I do that too. Like I'll like replay something awful and embarrassing I did, and I'll be like, "Well, remember that because I have forks in my eyes now." And just like when I think about the other people in my life who are so magical and incredible, defining themselves like that, I'm like, wow, you're really missing out on some cool chunks of you. And I think sometimes a good sit and thinking around is just the medicine needed to reconnect with those. Like, of course, there's going to be uncomfortable, like, oh, here's everything I've been avoiding. But then once you breathe
Ooh.
that, you're like, I like donuts. And nice pleasant things come up that you remember are also a part of you. I
Yeah,
think I need to take a commercial break because it's
it's
completely
real dark. So let's pause on donuts and sitting there, and we will come back and talk more.
yay.
All right.
Hi, I changed my mind. It's not quite dark yet, so now we've got this campfire vista. Um,
It's beautiful.
I love the Pacific Northwest. It's the
Somebody
best.
asked me today, they were like, because I had posted on my Instagram, because I'm going up to the Pacific Northwest soon. But I put PNW and they're like, what's the PNW?
What is it? Twins. Yeah, I guess that's a weird combination of letters. W and X specifically. Anytime it comes up, I'm always like,
What noise does an X make? Ah! It's a
because Portland
Chewbacca
goes by
noise.
PDX, and the first time I saw that, I was like, how did you do this?
I know. I saw that too, and I was like, PDX.
Why did you do this? Why this choice?
Because it's Portland.
It's Portland.
That's why, right there.
Yeah.
It's a time.
Or
I know it's
LAX, all
so.
these different things. It's like, why the X?
X.
Why?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So sitting there,
Mm-hmm.
I if you hear that noise, that's a cat outside my door.
Is it Daisy?
That's Daisy Bear wanting
What
to
is she
get
doing?
in. She's just scratching at the door, wanting to get in.
Cute.
Yeah, so if it sounds like somebody's breaking into my room, it's because somebody's trying to break into my room.
It's literally happening right now in
It's
real
just
time.
that somebody is a cat. Anyway, um, I feel like it's so interesting. I'm trying to pick up the threads of our conversation and where we were, but I I think something you touched on. I'm trying to literally play this back in real time, so
Hmm.
watch me think, everyone.
You know what? Actually, I'm going to be double extra. And while you think about it, pause again to actually go inside this time.
Oh, okay. Second break. See you
Second
guys
break.
inside. All right, we've returned from our second commercial break, and Sheila is officially inside the house now.
It's great. I mean, it's nice being out. I love being outside. And
Yeah.
it's nice at night, but then I was like, I don't want to Blair Witch our first episode that feels like bad omens.
Bad omens, not
Many,
good
many bad
omens.
omens.
Not to be confused with Good Omens, which is a great series. Shout out to that
Name of
series.
that show. I was like, what's the one with the omens and the angel?
And the demon,
Oh,
who is
I haven't
it?
seen that show. I've been meaning to see it.
I mean, I'm not getting paid to plug this show
But
as it was, but I wish I was because it's a genuine love of mine, and I'm a huge fan of Neil Gaiman, so it's a great show.
I have to add it back to my list.
Add it back on there, everyone. We've got the time.
We've got the time.
We've always had the time.
We have. It's so true.
I think that's such an interesting concept too, is that people are like, rather than just saying they don't want to do something,
Mm.
I don't have the time. You're like, that's interesting because if you cared, you would have the time.
Well, I think it goes back into that like politeness concept, right? That it's like rude to actually state how you're feeling. Which
Mm-hmm.
is funny because like if someone were to be like, "Hey Sheila, do you want to go on a 10-mile hike?" My gut would say, "I don't want to." And there are many people in my life who I think I feel comfortable enough being like, "No, that sounds like not fun for me. Happy for you."
Yeah.
Um, but it's interesting that we tell white lies rather than just being upfront and honest. It's like we're, again, it goes into that weird like identity placeholder thing. Like it's scary to admit that you don't like something.
Or that if you
Like,
dislike an idea or you don't like the same things, you somehow can't be friends.
yeah, and I guess that's part of childhood, right? Is that it's like,
Mm.
oh, you like this? Well, you're a loser. So we're still like
Yeah. We're
that.
still little kids, honestly.
Yeah, we all, when nothing really changed.
Not a lot. We got bigger, older.
Yeah. God, I thought it was going to be so much taller. Jesus. I remember seeing like just larger humans and being like, that will be me one day. That is growing up. And that didn't
At
happen.
what point did you realize you weren't going to grow anymore?
It hit me pretty late, to be perfectly honest. And I think it's just because like I had cousins who were 10 years older than me. So it was like the perfect combo of like, okay, you're like close enough in age that I can relate to you. But
Yeah.
you're also like an older person from my vantage point. So I saw them.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is to be a big grown up. And then
A big.
I think I was like out of college when I was like, this might not happen for me.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's wild.
it's a time.
It's weird when you start to realize things in your life that are like you think you've known, but you actually haven't had that realization. I don't know how you know what I'm saying.
It's so true. I was just talking to somebody about that, a friend of mine, and I think she wouldn't mind me sharing this. We were talking this morning, and she thought that Franklin Roosevelt's wife's name was Delano growing up, and this was not questioned again. It's those funny things where like it's like random information your brain misfiles and then it never comes up again and you're a grown human and you're like, what? Like this isn't a thing?
I know that happens to me all the time, and I say it with such sincerity that sometimes people believe me.
That's my favorite is
When you're
accident.
like, no, it's totally this. It's
Yeah, it's this. God, I've done that so much to my friend Safi. There's so many things
totally.
told her that she just walked around being like, a person I trust said this, so it is trustworthy. And, it wasn't.
Oh man, leading our friends astray.
Yeah,
It
that's what
happens.
it is, right? That's what it looks
Yeah. My thing is that I always think about when we think about these facts that we have in our lives. How lucky are we that we can just fact check something, and yet we are so lazy that we don't do it?
like. I know. Well, I think once we decided that there's no such thing as a fact, it kind of really, I mean, you can
Yeah.
interpret anything you want then, which is
Ooh,
kind of horrifying.
it is.
I don't know. I mean, I guess from my vantage point, I'm like, wouldn't you want some things to be stable? Right?
I
Like,
guess here's the thing. Yes, but only if it serves the narrative. And I'm not even talking about like a political narrative or anything like that, but a narrative in that doesn't make them comfortable.
yeah, yeah. And I think that when facts in a way are establishing common ground, I
Mm-hmm.
think when you don't want to establish any inch of common ground, um, there cannot be just one universal truth for anything. It's interesting. It's an interesting paradigm that we're all stuck in right now as a world, because everybody is speaking from a place that is at their heart, that is very important to them, no matter from which side they're speaking from. And I think it's so hard in those things to be able to listen. Going back to listening,
Mm.
skill that I want to work on better for sure is if I'm talking with somebody who doesn't share the same political beliefs as me. It takes a lot of patience to be like, okay, where are they coming from? Like, how can
Mm-hmm.
I show up in this moment and actually listen and try to make my point heard, which is not going to happen unless I'm listening.
Yeah.
Um, which is scary because sometimes that does mean, going back to your concept of surrender, that does mean surrendering a little bit. And I remember like getting really hooked on the concept of surrender last summer and talking to somebody about it. And they were like, I hate the word surrender. Like that is losing a battle. And I was like, oh,
Uh,
thing. I think that surrender doesn't necessarily mean an end point.
No, it's the beginning.
Yeah, it's just a moment. Like you can be like, okay, I'm having a conversation with someone. It's taking a bizarre turn. I'm gonna like write it out so that I can see the best way to continue communicating with this person, or if it's time to just hang up.
She said it. She said the title.
You can't really like. You can't you can't make progress, I think, if you're not going to do that kind of analytical thinking. And it's so hard when it's personal. I mean, I think that's really the work we need to be doing as allies, right? Is that work of like, okay, I'm going to find the common ground with this person, because it's not the job of marginalized communities to be doing that single-handedly. Like,
amen.
It's like privilege in a nutshell, as I can be like, I'm going to have a conversation that makes me feel
that you get to have that conversation. Like that's as far as it goes, is you have to feel discomfort with your family. And I'm not saying it's easy. As somebody who's experienced a lot of that recently, that I have so much privilege, and I get to have these conversations. And I'm not saying it's easy, it's not, but it is on a spectrum much easier than having your life be threatened, right? Like objectively,
yes,
it's less dangerous. I think this is interesting. And I think I would say the main thing about this whole thing is when you are in a space where you're deciding if you want to surrender to a conversation, it doesn't have to be unsafe. If it feels unsafe, then it's not worth it.
Yeah, that's really the difference between a momentary surrender and a just hang up moment. If it's like, okay, this is a weird term, I'm going to like write it out and see what happens. That's you assessing the situation. That really is what listening is assessing and taking it in. But if you're like, no, this is going nowhere, like this person is not willing to have an actual conversation, we're talking in two parallel universes, that's for sure a just hang up moment. And it's not coming from a place of like, screw you. It's unless you wanted to, and then more power to you.
I mean, that's, everything has its place. For me personally, I don't do that because that will torture me later on in the evening. I'll be trying to go to bed and I'll be like, do you remember that thing you said?
Do you remember the time you did
5 minutes?
Yeah, you really got to put that. If you've gotten me to the point of being like, fuck you, then like you've really done a lot to set yourself up for that. That's not a thing that comes easily.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes you do what you can, and you see if they're willing to be open right now, and you just hang up on that moment, and it's not coming from a place of like, well, I tried and I like whatever. It's like, no,
right.
I will probably revisit this moment with this person
again and again.
Right. And like try talking to them again. It's clearly not working in this moment. And
I think what's interesting to me is the conversations that I think have made change are not the direct conversations. Yes. They're always the fringe conversations around things that are personal or adjacent to the thing we're talking about. And I think the other thing that goes hand in hand with that is just living your life in a way that you do. Your actions speak louder than your words.
Yeah, that's so true.
And it that goes across the board for everything. I was talking with one of our president of our company last night, and she was like, when people tell you who they are, believe them.
One of my faves.
And people tell you who they are, whether they mean to or not.
Ooh, it's when they don't mean to that I'm like, got an inside glimpse into your world.
Isn't that so crazy? But it's like actions speak louder than words. People are who they say they are. And, words without changed behavior mean nothing.
Yeah. God, nobody needs that. Nobody needs another diatribe. Podcast.
Listen, they're allowed to watch.
Yeah, you're allowed to watch and listen. Words can be good sometimes.
Listen to us.
Listen.
We're clearly very intelligent, worldly.
Yes, these wordsmiths talking to everybody.
A couple of regular
A
wordsmiths.
couple of wordsmith. That's a word that needs to, there's so many goofy words like that need to be used more often because they're so dramatic.
The word I can't get out of my head from yesterday was wanderous. She is a wanderess.
Wanderous. I know, it's terrible. First of all, it's like, why did we gender this word? Like, that wasn't necessary.
I hate it. I actually hate the word actress as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the word defined itself. It didn't have to. But especially, like, actress has a history. Wanderous doesn't have a history. That was just like, let's aggressively gender this word that doesn't need it.
Like, why can't I just be a wanderer?
One who wanders. A person.
No.
Yeah, goes that
absolutely not.
Goodness gracious.
Silly times.
This is a silly time.
Well, friend, how do we feel about our first Just Hang Up?
I'm feeling like we should just hang up on it.
Oh my gosh. I think it would be kind of fun.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this. If we had a little segment at the end of it, what are some things that you're just hanging up on right now?
Just, okay, things that I'm just hanging up on right now. I'm just hanging up on the notion that the pandemic can't be fun and enjoyable. I've started doing these like lovely rituals that I would totally never have time for in the before time, like having my morning tea or coffee outside, or like I've been trying to eat vegan for environmental reasons, and last night and today for lunch I had this incredible cheese board, and it was so divine, and I was like, who knew? Date night for one, like just within reason. I think just living to enjoy more and giving myself a reason to be like, yeah, instead of having this year be just a placeholder, right? I'm hanging up on the notion that this year needs to just die in a hole, and instead I'm trying to make 2020 a good year, like a fun year, as much as you can, with everything that's happening.
Yeah, I love that. I love both of those hang-ups.
What are you just hanging up on?
What am I just hanging up on? I am hanging up, this is serious. I am hanging up on allowing myself to give away my time, my energy, and my light to people who don't deserve it.
Yes. It's so exhausting.
It is so exhausting. And I implore every one of you, if you are empathic, empathetic, a giver, however you want to say that, to raise your energetic minimums of what is acceptable for you and the treatment you deserve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm hanging up on anybody who doesn't adore me.
Yes. That's so good.
So bye. If you don't hear from me, you'll know why.
You'll know it was targeted. Hey, I love that. Yeah. Nobody feels good about a black hole. Like, the concept of them in space makes me uncomfortable. So yeah, don't invite that in your life. Goodness.
Cut it out. Hang up on it.
Hang up on it.
Well, on that note.
Well, I guess we're gonna just hang up on all of y'all, lovely listeners, and please check us out on the Insta, and there will be more episodes coming. So thanks for listening and riding with us here on this pilot of Just Hang Up, the podcast.